Right. Hello. Today we are going to be doing a training on Achieve using the course Myers Psychology for the AP course, the 4th edition. Now, however, today everything I'm going to be covering, will be specific to the platform's functionality. Just to start now with some basic navigation, over on the left-hand side, this menu here is how you navigate through the different parts of your course. Where we are now is My Course. This is where you'll find all your where your course content lives. Next, you'll have access to a resources page where you can go to find additional content, both for yourself as the instructor and for your students. You then have access to a gradebook, which is built nicely into the platform here, an ebook for access to the student edition of the book, as well as your teacher's edition. A reports page, which is a great way to monitor your students' performance and activity throughout the course. And lastly, a people type page, which is simply just going to be a roster of your students. But today we will start with My Course. So as I mentioned, My Course, this page is where you will find all of the course content that has currently been added into your Achieve course here. So Achieve courses do give you the option here to start preloaded. So you will have some content items already added in here when you first start. To open up any of these folders here, I simply just have to click on it. And then we'll be able to see the individual module folders as well. So if I go and say, click on module 1.3, we'll then find some assessments that can be assigned to your students, as well as some reading activities that can be assigned as well. Now, each unit and module should have assessments like so. So we could just take a quick look to see how each of these is in here. Now, these assessments in Achieve do come ready to go if you just wanted to go ahead and assign them, and that's found over here where it says no date. But of course, it's great to be able to preview these before actually assigning them to students. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this particular assessment right here. And this will bring us into the instructor view for this assessment. So from this page, you can see how many questions are currently on this assessment. And then you'll actually have the ability to come down here and preview each of these questions. So it'll allow you to see the solution. It'll also allow you to see the incorrect feedback students would receive for answering these questions incorrectly. So you can preview, each of these questions here, see all of that information as well before actually assigning this for your students. Now, a great thing about these assessments is that they are editable. So if you wanted to make customizations to these, you absolutely can. The checkbox is next to these questions. So say I select this first one here. Now, we always have the option to remove questions from these assessments if it is a particular question you don't want your students to be assessed on. You also have the ability to create question pools, which would randomly assess your students on one of these two questions. You simply just determine how many questions would be asked, and then you can create that pool. Another cool feature is you have this option to copy to edit. So this allows you to make copies of any of these questions in here and then make edits to them. So if you ever wanted to change the question itself, or maybe rearrange the answers or add additional answers in here, this is how you can do so. So you can really just copy it to make your own customizations and then save that change down at the bottom. All right, now there also is a question bank tab available for this course. These will be all the questions currently provided within the course. So if you ever wanted to add anything additional, you can always filter through using the table of contents. You also have the ability to search for terms and topics up towards the top here if you have something specific in mind. Or you can apply these additional filter options. So if you're looking for a certain question type, maybe a certain level of difficulty, you can just apply these here and it will narrow down your search. So then you can quickly select the questions you want and add them to your assessments. The next tab is for custom questions. So this particular tab is where you can find any of, if you make a copy of a question, this is where they'll be stored. You also can create new questions from this page. So we do have some more simple options for multiple choice and numeric entry in here, but there are also some more advanced options. So if you ever wanted to put your own free response questions in, maybe create a multiple select type of question, this is where you can come to do so. You just select the question type and then begin typing in your question. Now, the last tab in here is a responses tab, and I quickly do want to go find an item that I've actually assigned so we can take a look at that responses tab with student data. All right. So here is what a responses tab will look like on the assessments. Now, each assessment in Achieve is going to have this page. Essentially, it's just going to provide you a summary of your student scores here. So you can actually take a look at all their averages along with some additional information, such as, how much time they spent, how many attempts it took them per question. And then it will actually break down all of the questions for you too. So you can see which particular questions your students struggled with the most based on how many of them got it correct on the first try. So that is the responses tab. The last tab in here you'll have is grading settings. So once you have gone through the assessment, it looks good and ready to be assigned, you would apply these grading settings, as these templates actually score the assessment or determine how the assessment will be scored by the platform. So there will be 5 in here when you first start your course. You can use any of these 5 here to apply to your assessments. If you're curious to see how these templates are set up, you can just click on these 3 dots and to view the details. So it'll show you, how this template is set up. You also have an option to make a copy. So if you ever wanted to make, edit this to customize the homework template, you just simply make a copy of it first. And then it will be stored down here underneath your custom templates, where you also can create brand new templates from scratch. So if you ever wanted to determine, create a template that allows for late submissions, maybe you want to gather student comments so they have to provide a rationale for their answer, or maybe you want to apply time limits. These are all the things you can set up within these grading settings. And then you would just save your changes up at the top here and then apply it to your assessments. All right. So now that we've taken a look at an actual assessment in Achieve, we do want to go over how to assign content. And that is done by hovering over on the right-hand side where you see this option for no date. So if you were to click right there, I have assigned this one. So, but clicking here will bring us to a resource details page where you can then come and assign it to your students. So you'd be able to pick your due date, the time, the point values, and whether or not this would be graded, ungraded, or extra credit. You also can adjust the student visibility from this page. By default, it will be visible for the entirety of the course, just so they can always review their work. You then have this option for student exceptions. So if you have any students that need time accommodations or just like a general exception, whatever the reason might be, this is where you can apply them. Essentially, you'll just be able to type in a student name, select a later date and time for them, and then just save the exception here. So this would allow that student to have more additional time that they might need to complete this assessment. Beneath that, you have an option for category and recommended use. This is simply determining which gradebook category this assignment would fall into here in Achieve. By default, you will have one set up when you first start your course. It will be assignments, but you can create additional gradebook categories from within Achieve's gradebook itself. And then recommended use is simply that, just a recommendation for when you want them to complete this assessment. It can either be set to none, pre-class, in-class, or post-class. Lastly, down at the very bottom, you once again have access to the assessment grading settings. So you can access these in 2 places: when you're actually previewing an assessment, and then when you're assigning that assessment. So there's just two ways to access them. Alrighty. So that is going over and assigning one assessment. There is a way to assign in bulk, though, here on Achieve. And that's where these little check boxes come into play on the left-hand side. So say I want to assign both of these items here. I will select both, and then I come up to where it says assign/edit at the top. Now from here, I can still adjust all this information individually, so the due dates, visibility, and points. But I also have these batch actions now over here on the left that allow me to update everything at once. So if I wanted to change due dates to a single date, I can do that. I can sequence them out for every week or so. I can update the points, the visibility. So this is a much quicker way to assign multiple items at once, so you don't actually have to go through each thing individually. All right. Now to get back out to our main home page, I can just click on course content right here, and it will take us back out of the folder. Right here, towards the top of this page, you may have noticed there's this option for viewing by, and it does show course content. But we do have a little drop-down menu here, so there's actually two other ways you can view this page. And this is something students will be able to do as well. But if I click on this drop-down, I can view this page by assignments, which is going to show me all of the content I have currently assigned in the order that it is due. So this is typically the view we find students like the most, just because it's very clear for them what they have to work on this week, next week, and so on. The other way you can view it is by resource type. This might be more beneficial to you as an instructor, as you can quickly find your different types of resources. So you can find your assessments, your readings, flashcards, interactive videos, such as these data interpretation videos and exploring research method videos. Additionally, you also can find your adaptive quizzes, which are the learning curves. And we'll take a look at one of these now. So this is a learning curve. How these function is students will be assessed on a number of topics, and they have to reach that target score in order to receive credit for this assignment. So it's graded based on completion. But these are adaptive quizzes. So the quiz will adapt to based on how students are answering the questions. And what I mean by that is if they're answering questions correctly for a specific topic, they will be asked fewer questions on that topic. Whereas if the system's picking up that they're struggling on a specific area, it'll focus in on that topic and ask them more questions based off that. So it adapts to how your students are performing to focus in on the areas that they might not have a better understanding in. Now, if I preview as a student, I can begin the activity. So you can see up at the top here where that question value is. So each question does have it start off as a high value. If I answer it incorrectly, that point value will decrease. I do have options here to get hints. Again, that will decrease the point value. Or I can show the answer entirely to get no points whatsoever. If I do that, the system will identify that as, I didn't know this question for this topic, so I will be asked something on this later down the road. Let's continue on. So what I did here was I actually tried to quickly answer this question, and the system actually stopped me. So when your students try to do that, it will slow them down and tell them to stop. We do have this in here to prevent students just from kind of clicking through these as rapidly as they can, since they are rated based on completion. But the system will stop them and tell them to go back over and review their work before they can move on to the next question. Now, another great feature of these is down here next to the hint option. it says read the ebook page on this topic, and this is at no penalty to your students at all. But this option right here will actually allow them to open up the ebook, which will appear over on the right hand side here. And it will take them to a page where they can find the answer to this question. So that really is the purpose of these learning curves, is to get your students to be engaging with the reading material more so they have a better understanding of the topics they're studying. It is a struggle to try to get students to read. So if they have these assessments that they need to take, and they can read the book have the book pulled up right next to them, it really gets them to engage more with that reading material. And just to show some sample data here, this is what a completed learning curve will look like. So you can get you can see which of your students actually reached the target score, how many questions it took them to get there, as well as which topics your class struggled with the most. So that is the learning curve. All right. Next, we're going to go ahead into resources. So this is where you can come to find anything additional for your course, both for your students and for yourself as teachers. So if you do have a search bar up at the top here, if you do have anything in mind. So let's see, if I'm looking for a specific type of video, I can just type that term up in there, and here are the spotlight videos. So it'll pull up all of those for me, and it does show me what has already been added into the course. In this case, it looks like all of these have already been added in for me. So that's one way you can search for. Let's see if we wanted to pull up maybe some data interpretation videos. We can do that as well. If I type that in correctly, it should pop up, and there we have it. So all of these, again, look to be added into the course for your students. And if we wanted to take one more look at a different type of video, the exploring, so if we typed in exploring, it should bring those videos up as well. Then there we go. So there's, if you do have those key terms in mind of what you're looking for, it's very easy just to search for it and pull it up. But if you're just kind of perusing through the resources, the table of contents is a great way to go. So we'll break your resources out from student resources and teacher resources. So your student resources will include things like flashcards, concept practice, learning curves. And the online assessments are some of the things one of the first things we just went through. Well, you also have access to your teaching resources. So from here, you can find your PD videos for each of these units. You can simply click on it here, and it will open up a new tab for you, so you can start watching the video. Oh, I believe it's an assessment in here. So you can start watching the video here in Achieve. You also will have some additional access to lecture slides and teaching resource materials. These things can be, once you click on them, will download automatically to your computer. Lastly, in here, there is a tab for My Custom Content. Now, this is where you go to find any custom content for your Achieve course. If you wanted to start building something new, you come here, and it allows you to build an assessment, upload a file, or add a link to an external URL. There's also a shortcut over here in the menu. This Create Content option brings us right back to here. It's just a quick way of getting there. Okay. Next, we'll take a look at the gradebook. So this is the gradebook here in Achieve. All your students will be listed out on the left-hand side, and then you'll see their scores underneath each assignment. You can click on a student score to adjust the points, as well as provide notes to your students. You also can change the display from percentages to point values. The big thing to cover would be these gradebook settings, though, as this is where you can come to create additional categories. So all you have to do is click on Add Category, give it a name, and determine if you want to use this Drop Lowest Grade feature. You also can edit the grade display. It can either be a whole number up to 2 decimal places. And then you have this option here to report in progress work. This is just determining when grades will be reported. So this first option is prior to the due date, which means when students complete the assessment, they can go and see their score. While the second option is after the due date has passed. This way, students are going to get their scores all at the same time, and it potentially eliminates one student getting solutions and sharing it with the others. There's also an option to require a student ID. This is simply going to appear next to your student's name once they are in the gradebook. It's just another way for you to identify them. All right, so that is the gradebook. Pretty straightforward. There is also an option to export the gradebook. It will export it to a CSV file if you ever needed to do that. All right, next we'll take a look at the ebook. So from this ebook tab, you will have access to both your teacher's edition of the book and the student edition. And we'll start off with your teacher's edition. All right. So here is the teacher edition of the ebook. Now, in terms of navigation, I do find the table of contents over here is the best way to do so. Your ebook will have all these planning pages as well. So it does give you a nice breakdown of the different modules, along with the resources that are available for them. Now, something that is pretty cool about the ebook is that while these, PD videos and lecture slides are all available here in the resources page, you actually can access them from the ebook directly. So if I click right there, it just downloaded those Unit 2 lecture slides. So, this is nice when you're actually, going through and planning. You'll have these resources directly linked in your ebook. So you don't have to jump back out of the book and navigate to the resources page to find them. You can just simply click on them here in the ebook. And again, they'll appear over in the margins for you. So there's multiple ways you can access them. And again, another teaching resource material. I just clicked on that right there and got the student activity directly from the book. So that is the teacher's edition. I do want to go into the student edition too, just to show you that and cover some more navigation in there, as they are pretty similar in terms of what they have. All right, so we're going into the student edition. And you may notice it looks very similar to your teacher's edition. Obviously, they don't have any planning pages or any additional content on, in the margins on the side here. But functionality wise, it is the same to the teacher's edition. You can use the table of contents to move between the different parts. There is this go-to page option down here at the bottom, so you can type a page number indirectly or use these arrows to hop between the sections. Some additional things you can do within the ebook. You have the ability actually to make notes and highlights, and that is done simply by clicking and dragging the link slow and then picking a highlighter color. Now, if I wanted to add a note, I simply just have to click on that highlight, add note, and it will appear over in the margins for myself. Now, your notes and highlights are all stored somewhere. If we come up to the top right corner, the third icon in, this is your workbook. So this actually holds all your notes and highlights for you. So you can easily access them, make edits, delete, or add additional notes. I also can jump back to an old note and highlight. So let's say I wanted to go back over this one I left a couple weeks ago. I can simply click on it here in my workbook, and it's going to take me to the page where I left that highlight so I can re-review this material here. The next tab is for bookmarks. This allows you to bookmark any page you find in the book, and that's found down here in the bottom left corner. Lastly, there's a tab for flashcards. Now, your students do have flashcard decks available with the course. Those should have already been added in there. But this is just an additional study tool for them. So it allows them to build a new deck, and then they can start typing in and adding cards. So they can either type in the front and back material themselves, or they can come and just select a portion of the text and create a flashcard automatically. So again, just an additional way for them to, create their own study tools. And they can study these decks, and they should function pretty similar to like how a Quizlet deck would function too. All right. Next, we have the reader preferences. So from here, your students will be able to adjust the text size. They can make it bigger if need be. They also can edit the font. They have a number of different styles available, including this open dyslexic font, which does make these readings more accessible to students with dyslexia. They also can change the background along with the margins and line height as well. But if your students make too many changes and it becomes, they can't read it like I've done here, it's very easy just to go back and reset the publisher format so they can go back to those default settings. Now back in the reader preferences, you'll notice the second tab is for highlighters. So this actually will allow you and your students to edit the highlighters that are available. So if you wanted to make any changes to the ones that are currently set up, you can. You also can create brand new ones too, so it gives you some flexibility here. Now, another cool thing you can do with the highlighters is you have this option here to set to public. Now, when a highlighter is set to public, that means it can be shared. And that's where this sharing tab comes into play. So if you as the teacher wanted to, share a highlight with your students, maybe you want them to focus in on a specific section, you would first have to set a highlighter to public, and then come over to the sharing tab. You'll have this link that you can distribute to your class. So once your students click on it, they can see any of your shared highlights and notes. You also have the ability to follow them. So your students would first have to set their highlighters to public, but then you can type in their emails down here and start following any public notes and highlights they have. And students can do this amongst themselves too. If they ever wanted to collaborate, they can just type each other's emails in and begin seeing what sharing notes and highlights amongst themselves. Should note that if you are going to be making public highlighters for your students, you do need to do it here in the student edition. If you do mark it up in the teacher's edition, they won't be able to see those. Lastly, the three dots in the right corner for more options. This is where you can find the read aloud controls, so it can read the whole page for you. You also have an option here to print the page if our students ever wanted to do that. And lastly, down at the bottom, you'll notice there's this option for download app. So we do have an ebook reading app that can be downloaded. It is compatible to Mac, Windows, and Chromebook, as well as mobile devices. But the whole purpose of this app is it lets you actually download the ebook. So if you have students that are, traveling a lot, might not have the best internet connections, they can at least download the ebook so they can always have access to the reading material. All right, that is the ebook. Next, we'll take a look at the reports page. Now, from the reports page, the first tab you'll see is called Insights. Now, insights are like high-level reports that allow you additional ways to monitor your students' performance and activity throughout the course. There are 6 of these in total that you can add into your course at any time. But the few I've added in here are, for what time the top assignments to review and how many my students are logging in. So the way these function is I can edit this insight. And let's say within the last 7 days, I want to see what assignments I need to review most with my class. It'll then pull up the assignments they struggled with the most based on, how many were able to answer correct on the first try. Then there's this one for student logins. This is a great way to see, maybe one of your weeks is looking a little slow. You're wondering why students aren't engaging with the course material or why work's not getting done. You can run that insight and it'll say, all right, it's because my students have not been logging in. In this case, everyone has been in the course recently, so that's a good sign. But yeah, these are what those are just some of the examples of the insights here. Again, just additional ways for you to monitor student performance and activity throughout your course. Now, up towards the top here, there's also an insight for the goal setting and reflection surveys. Now, what these surveys are is there one intro survey and then 4 checkpoint surveys that can be assigned at any time. But the intro survey is going to ask your students to set a goal for themselves. Along with that goal, they'll be asked to put together essentially a learning plan for themselves on how they're going to reach that goal. Then they'll have these checkpoint surveys that can be assigned at any time after a big exam, project, test, whatever it might be. These surveys, checkpoint surveys, are going to have your students reflect on the progress they've made so far, if they feel confident that they're going to reach their goal, or if there's any roadblocks that are preventing them from reaching those goals. And these can be things both, in and outside of the classroom. Now, as the instructor, you actually will be able to view your students' responses to these surveys here. So you can see, what goals they're hoping to achieve, what challenges they might be facing, and then determine actions and how you're going to help them out and reach those goals from there. Again, so that is what you can monitor here from this insights page. Next, you have reports. This is your more standard reports page here. It'll give you a breakdown of performance by unit, learning objective, and student. If I wanted to take a look at a particular unit, I can click right there and it'll give us a breakdown of the subunits as well as individual assignments. So if I want to take a look again at an assignment, this should take us back to the responses page for this particular assignment. So I can see how my class performed down here. So that is the reports page. It also does allow you to take a look at individual students' performance just to see how they've been performing in your class as well. All right. Lastly is the people page. Now this is simply just going to be, a roster of all your students that are currently in this course. But the big thing you could do from here is create student groups. So if you ever needed to split your class up into groups, or maybe you have a group of students that need accommodations, so you just want to create a group of them for assigning purposes, it's very easy to do so. You just have to simply give it a name. And once you have your group created, you can just add students, either type those names in directly or click that little plus sign right there to add them. All right. The last little bit I would like to show is that you can preview this as a student. It's great to be able to see, how the course looks through their eyes. But essentially, they only have access to my course, the gradebook, and the ebook. And if I show you what this looks like, here is the student view. Right, but that is all I have to really share with you today. I hope this has been useful and we have an understanding of how Achieve functions. And we look forward to getting you and your students up and running in our course. Thank you.